Welcome to the Ascension Stargate podcast series, where we discuss the aspects of human consciousness, spirituality, metaphysics and philosophy, energy, extraterrestrial life, science, biology, and the alchemy of higher states of beingness, all from a heart-centered perspective. I am your host and guide, Glenn Mate, and let's begin our journey. Hey everybody, I'm Glenn Mate from Divine Phoenix Healing and also the Ascension Stargate podcast series. And today I've got another truly amazing guest. I am so blessed and grateful to call Tyler Ellison a good friend, a colleague, and a co-creator. So without further ado, my good friend Tyler Ellison, welcome to the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great to be here, and it's really nice to be able to spend Saturday morning talking about great things and catching up. So thanks for creating this, man. That's a wonderful opportunity.
Thanks, brother, for spending some time with me again. And we're going to deep dive into some really cool stuff today. But I just wanted to let our viewers know how Tyler Ellison and I made our connection. So we both have a mutual friend, Rob Gauthier, the ET Whisperer, and many of you know him, have heard his work, and have heard all of his channelings. Rob introduced Tyler and I together, and we had a short experience together on Ruben Langdon's Lemurian Life Expo in Shasta this year. And then Tyler came to help me out with my retreat series, which is the Ascension Stargate. And he was a presenter at my retreat. Tyler offers this amazing experience because he's multi-talented. He's just not a channel, but also he is an instructor of this wise and long magic that we all can access. So, Tyler, I want to jump right into that. And can you tell me a little bit about all of the magical things that you bring into our reality?
Yeah, thanks. Magic's my favorite subject. So the fact you're asking me this is getting me really hyped to get started. So this is my favorite subject. I think as in addition to this, I think magic is most people's favorite subject, but they don't know it. And this is because we have a very stylized idea of what magic is because of Hollywood. And I mean, hey, more power to it, right? It's great to have those fantastical ideas and examples, right? I mean, Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, we see magic in these very badass, epic ways. But magic's described by Aleister Crowley, controversial yet very important figure, as the essentially utilization of your personal will to create change. That is magic in a nutshell. We're doing that all the time. You get an idea and you say, okay, I want to make that real. And you have a change in yourself. Something happens that motivates you. You create a structure, a plan, you take action on it. And then with enough time, repetition, consistency, your goal is realized. This is magic. This is how the ancients thought of magic. It's not this, super woo-woo thing. It's how people create. We call it manifestation, right? In our newer times, right? The new age culture, we just say manifestation or law of attraction. But really what we're talking about classically here is magic. Aleister Crowley spells magic with a K to differentiate it from stage magic, performance magic, right? Which is, of course, also important. I would say stage magic is a branch of magic, illusion magic, ultimately, right? I would say it's real in the sense that it sure tricks the heck out of a lot of people. Right? It works. There might be a method to it, but all miracles and all illusions and all phenomenon have methods, have rules, have laws that they follow, right? So really with the human mind, we know this from quantum physics and many of us from our personal experiences, the human mind ultimately has no limits. All of our limits are learned. We can, because we're spiritual beings, transcend these limits. And when you learn how to use what I would describe as your spiritual muscles, that ability to use your will to create change, it multiplies in tremendous ways. Because of course you can take physical action to make change. Most people do this, but there are so many other levels you exist upon. And energetic actions, psychic actions, spiritual actions, these can be performed, and they are arguably more impactful and are more important than any of the physical actions you'll take in that process. Yet the physical actions are essential, and if they're neglected, you can do all of the meditation you want. You might not get what you ask for, right? But the meditation is the most important, that process. And in terms of what I offer, I have studied extensively at this point for probably 10 years at least, uh, various magical and occult systems. It's a big love of mine because for me, channeling was my spiritual lore. That's what really drew me into the spiritual world. You could even say it seduced me into spirituality because when I heard channeling, that was, in my opinion, well done. And I'm very lucky because my introduction to channeling was Daryl Anka. Like immediately, that was the first channeler I ever became aware of. And when I heard that and the teachings from that being, Bashar, I just could feel within me that whatever the heck was coming through that person was more real than anything I was experiencing in my world. I could feel this unshakable quality behind those words. And I was like, I don't know what that is. I didn't have a language for it at the time, but I was like, whatever that is, like that's what I'm supposed to be after. Like that's what I'm supposed to be chasing. And I think he really created a pathway for not just me, but a lot of people because of his sharing of his gift. And I wanted to essentially become my own oracle, my own guide. I was inspired by him and I was like, I want to do this for myself because, I have a lot of questions and I think that requires, a type of specialized attention. A world famous channeler can only address so many needs, right? The kinds of needs I was looking for at that point were more personal. So I stride, what's the word I want to use? I focused on cultivating that essentially. That's what my obsession and my focus became. And then that actually is what led me into the magic. Because at a certain point, you're doing a magical act, right? That's what's realized, right? You're essentially doing a divination. You're doing how would I describe it? An act of telepathy, right? It's a spiritual and magical action, the channeling. So as a result, when you recognize that it's not necessarily a gift, it's more so a skill. You're like, okay, well, I can sharpen this skill. I can get better at this skill. I can potentially get really good, endlessly good at this skill. That's what I got really excited about. So recognizing that, I began to explore these different traditions because I felt they could offer me upgrades to make what I do as a channeler better. And I found it to be 100% true. It's 100% true. It's described by many that in the following way: if you perform these occult rituals and practices, you become indistinguishable from what we would call in the Bible a prophet.
Hmm.
It says a side effect. If you do this, you will become a prophet. And it's because you'll understand the patterns, right? A prophet's someone who sees the fractal patterns of reality and how that affects the many levels of our world, be that on the human level of our culture, be that on the level of the elements with the earth, or be that with celestial things. They see those patterns and they just know what it means. Right. So they tell people of what's coming and they're like, oh no, they have a magical power and like a special, God's whispering in their ear. It's like, some of them, yes. But a lot of them, they're just natural scientists, right? They're just looking at what's happening, and because they get it, they'll tell you what's going to happen next. Um, so that's what drew me to this. And in terms of what I offer, because I want to give that as a preface because I think it makes what I offer more attractive. It makes it a little more potent. It has some zest. I offer meditation training, magical training specifically in the areas of the Kabbalah, the Tao, what we would call Taoism, Neigong, inner alchemy. And these are my two major focuses. I've dabbled in a lot of traditions, studying, I'm not an expert, but studying and dabbling with Greek traditions, Egyptian traditions, um, Norse traditions, yogic traditions. But what I found in my studying and my searching is the traditions that have the most substance behind them, that is the most supportive for magical creation. These two traditions are the Kabbalah and are the Taoist inner alchemical techniques. Out of everything I've seen, those are the two where it's my belief if somebody knows both, they are unstoppable. Like the world could crush them, right? But they don't die, if you know what I mean. Like they're whatever they are, it's indestructible. This is Christ beating death, right? This is that kind of power, right? It doesn't even matter what happens. That's how unflinching you are. This is these yogic gurus, right? Where they're like, they're not even moving and there's bugs eating their arms. And everyone's like, aren't you bothered? Like, what the hell? And they're like, why are you bothered? Do you not see this is not real? There is no bug. I have no arm. You're talking to yourself, right? There's these people that they defy the limits, and that's what magic ultimately helps us to do. So those two systems, they will create miracles. It's all about really becoming your own source. I mean, you're made in the image and likeness of the source of this universe, and that's a great gift because it means you have the entirety of the cosmos inside of you. And if you form a conscious connection with all of those powers while you're alive, well, something like that will turn off. So when you transition into the spirit world, all of those powers are still there. So now it's like lucid dreaming as a soul. So you can start to create whatever the heck you want. And if you have these systems, you have the spiritual technology to never need to take on a body again. And that's, I think, a beautiful gift because that means you're free. You can live forever. So you can stay in the spirit world and, train in the celestial schools. You can form your own. You can there's even occupations. You can it's like committees of the beings
Right.
that oversee the cosmos. You can get jobs with them. You can also just create your own universe. And they say that the highest of beings, right? You don't even need to incarnate to interact with physical reality. You could just project a body at will in multiple places at once, show up and give like teachings all around the world, then vanish. Right. And this has been reported. I mean, there's a lot of saints that have this, and this is what magic provides. It provides a doorway to the fantastical, and it makes the fantastical the normal. So that way your life can be really whatever you need it to be.
Right. We are the architects of our own reality, and we forget that we are here as a remembrance to know thyself.
Mm,
And to do that, we need to investigate who we are from the inside out instead of allow all of the outside information to quantify, to qualify, and to label who we truly are.
mm,
So you hit on so many great aspects. I want to touch on it that, with magic, the magic exists already within us. And
yeah.
it's about pulling the string of that little piece, of this little piece, and bringing that out and looking at it and say, oh, this is my idea. This is my thought. This is my intention. Can I continue to cultivate a manifestation that is vast, wide, and deep of this particular idea? So that creates this magical, miraculous, and magnificent life,
Mm,
right? All beginning with M's and all derived from the word magic.
mm,
And how simple it is that we can do all of this, that we do have every aspect of what we deem as the grand creator resides within us. And it's just a matter of believing that first in order to access those points. And once we believe that we're the creator of all of this great magic, then we're on the frequency of that magic, which then brings us more because we are in that attunement, that alignment, that resonance with that frequency, and it just keeps getting better and better. So, lots there that you just said to unpack.
mm.
And, we're probably going to have a couple of podcasts, Tyler, because
Sure.
we got some good juice here going.
It's
Um,
good. These are, yeah, like you said, these are the conversations people want. And I'm with you. I think that I know I feel nourished when I get to talk to my friends about this stuff. And I know when I'm looking for things to take in, it's usually people having these kinds of conversations. So yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. So, earlier we were talking off camera about the human versus the human and what we would consider animal type beings, the combination of those two, the humanoids, and how we found this in mythology
Yeah.
and how it comes in just about every culture repetitively. So there's a pattern, and we're not just picking out Greek mythology or Chinese mythology or Japanese tradition or Native American tradition and culture. We see this all over the planetary history through different organizations. So let's dive it back into that because that's such a cool topic to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think with all mythologies and holy books, I think an important thing to keep in mind is these ancient people were attempting to describe what they saw and what they experienced, and they're attempting to do that using a limited symbol set. So, in a lot of these holy books, what's needed is the metaphorical interpretation where you can look at all of these symbols and say, okay, if this were a dream, what would this symbol in the dream mean? And if you look at the holy book like that, you can derive all types of meanings, thinking of everything as a representational subject. But you can also take the literal approach, which is when they say that, when they say that Enoch was taken by the Elohim, they mean Enoch was taken by the Elohim to another dimension, right? And when it's said that Archangel Uriel is taking Enoch around the cosmos and showing him these different dimensions, it literally means he's flying him around the cosmos. It's not a vision, it's not a dream. This is a vehicle, this is a spaceship. He's being brought to these different places, right? That's the literal interpretation of these things. And the more I'm learning, the more evidence I'm finding for these literal interpretations, because it's not just modern day Gnostics that are like saying all of these things. This is not even biblical scholars. This is coming from linguists who have translated for the Vatican saying these things. So like this is a literal spaceship. So they're attempting to describe some of these things in different ways. For example, there's only about what I've heard, I'm not a linguist, but from what I've heard, there's only about 8,000 words in Hebrew. It's not a lot of words compared to other languages, right? So it's a smaller language. So they don't have as many tools to be able to describe some of these things. So they have to speak poetically. But to get to this point we're examining here of these hybrid beings, where this stands out the most in my explorations has been in the Gnostic works, the Nag Hammadi texts, these types of things, which were recovered, I believe, in Egypt. Some of them were burned, but they were found by family, essentially. And they didn't know what the hell they were. And they were just burning them for fire. And it turns out it's like, this is like, holy texts written by people that the mainstream religion tried to exterminate. They tried to kill all these people, and they're because of what they believed, and they believe in the idea of an evil creator god ultimately, that made this universe. Essentially, they see the creator god of this universe as the devil, and that has some interesting implications. But we can save that. But the premise in Gnosticism that's relevant here is this concept of archons. So these are, for lack of better words, not even fallen angels. They're just the angels, right? They're the angels, and they work for this kind of narcissistic mob boss called Yaldabaoth. It's the Gnostic version of Yahweh, essentially, or that's one of the pronunciations. Technically, no one knows how to pronounce the name of God, but it's said to be Yahweh by many people. But it's said that this Yahweh in the Gnostic text is Yaldabaoth, and he's just horrible. He's evil, and these archons are beings that he creates, and they're based off of the higher heavens. So Yaldabaoth, Yahweh, he's making his own universe, but it's kind of imperfect. It's based in ego, essentially. So these angels that he makes, they carry, you could say, derivatives of these higher source energies, but they have a lot of impurity, right? So these angels, they're miraculous. To us, they're divine beings, right? But of course, we look at the holy books and we're like, why is God such a psychopath? Right. Well, like we've all probably thought that if you grew up in America or in Europe and you heard about religion, Abrahamic religion, I'm sure you're all like, why does he want us to like murder and pillage our neighbors and like kill their high priests for worshiping a different God? Like, what's up with that? Right. It's like, well, it is a very powerful God-like being, but it's far from perfect, right? And it's said that we are, in a certain way, created in its likeness, our bodies, but our spirit is created by a God beyond it, higher than it. But it's so narcissistic and egotistical, it can't see that. And what it says is, there are no other gods but me, worship only me. And, of course, that's the most, hubristic statement to make. I'll call that being out. I'll be like, what about Odin? What about Shiva? Right? What about all the people that have had real experiences with them? Right? It's like, who's the liar here? Right? Who's the liar? And even
Right.
Christ in the Bible, right? He calls Yahweh, the God of the Pharisees, right? A murderer and a traitor and a liar. I'm paraphrasing, but it's essentially these insults, right? He says, from the beginning, this is your God, right? So it's like, whoa, he's not calling the God of the Pharisees, he's not calling that God his father. So who's Christ's father then? If
Right.
it's not this God that, the mainstream groups are worshiping. But these archons, I know I'm going all over the place, so I'll keep it focused. But these archons, they're described as these human animal hybrids, and they're what create the human form, but they're far from good. They're not evil, but they're gods, right? So they make the human form, and immediately they're like trying to like have sex with the female form that they've made. But the female form's imbued with the true source's power. It's only the body that's manipulated by the archons, right? So the spirit that animates it is above them ultimately.
Right.
So when they attempt this, horrible, action, she turns on powers, and it says she shapeshifts into a tree and then vanishes, leaving only, they call it her shadow, right? But really it's like a type of, energetic impression. And it's said that these archons, these animal human hybrids, they're so desirous for her that they fornicate with her shadow, right? But she gets out like safely. But this is like the Gnostic Genesis story, right? That's a very different story than we've been told. It's more reminiscent of what we see in the Sumerian myths, right? With the creation of Homo
Right.
sapien, Adapa, through the Anunnaki. It's more like that, right? That the human being was created for an indulgent purpose, be it mining gold or be it pleasures. I don't know what else to say, but that's what the Gnostics indicate, right? They made humans for like their own indulgence. But these archons, I mean, they're not all evil, right? It's said that Yaldabaoth actually is slain and goes into the underworld,
Hmm.
and another god takes his place. That god is Zabaoth, Sabbath, right? The god of, the Jewish faith. It's said
Right.
that he replaces Yaldabaoth, the higher goddess Sophia, the mother of Yaldabaoth, right? She sees Yaldabaoth's corrupt. She sees how fallen this universe has gotten. So she allows for this power transfer to happen. And now Yaldabaoth is in hell. He's in the underworld. He's still alive. And he brings beings with him. And this is where we get this idea of these, the god of hell, right? The devil and these fallen things. But Sabaoth is said to be more compassionate, more loving, right? And sees like a true purpose to humanity, right? He doesn't just see them as objects. He sees that there's something special, important about humanity. And it said that Sabaoth is more like that one true God versus Yaldabaoth, kind of made more like ego, false self.
Hmm.
So there's beneficial archons that serve this newly appointed demiurge, Sabaoth, right? These new archons, well, not even new archons, the current archons that stay and are part of this organization, right? They now serve him, and it said they're now working towards the benefit of humanity. Where the ones that fall with Yaldabaoth, they are now working for the detriment. So this is the Gnostic concept of fallen angels. And really, from my perspective, this is where we get beneficent and malevolent ETs. This is where that
Right.
comes from, this story. And
And when
and
we dial it out just a couple steps further, we can say, well, were the archons master geneticists? And
yeah.
does that master geneticist play into a larger role? And when we think about outside of our containment of Earth, there's a galaxy, and then outside of the galaxy is the universe. So, what is happening intergalactically where these conflicts are taking place? And we would consider these planetary wars. And we could go back to the thought process of the Orion Wars, or what has happened within our galaxy on other planets with the destruction of Tiamat, and how other things have taken place on Mars. So when we keep dialing out this story, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and much more interesting, actually, to start to understand that we're looking at the microcosm of these little parts and pieces, these little stories. And it starts out with one thing, but really the story is much, much bigger. And then we start to see the role, how the human race starts to play in this intergalactic big ball of that's just evolving constantly.
Hey, have you seen the show Rick and Morty?
I haven't.
Okay, it's a cartoon. It's sort of a spoof on Back to the Future. It's about this like mad scientist grandfather and his grandson, but he's essentially like think of Tony Stark, Iron Man, and the devil put together, right, as like a mad scientist. So this guy's like the worst. He's an alcoholic, always drinking, getting into terrible like sci-fi scenarios that are like, what are you doing? Like you're in a love affair with a extraterrestrial hive mind. Like, so this guy forms a relationship with like a parasite that's controlling a whole species, right? And they have like a whole thing, and it's wild as you can imagine. But this is the show. But the more my point is, the more you study the stuff, like you're saying, and see everything, the more this becomes essentially a type of Rick and Morty world, a type of sci-fi world where we realize like there really are beings that just are like, oh, like let's I'm tired of working. We've been working for thousands of years. Kind of sucks. Let's just make something else. I'm sick of mining gold. Let's just make something, right? And they just make us because of how, like
Right.
dissatisfied they are. And they move on. And we're like, what are we? We exist. Like we're left with this existential like crisis as a species because we're brought into existence because people didn't want to work anymore. Right? It's like it's almost humorous. Like there's a
Right.
humor in that, I think. Like it's silly. It's silly. And then I'm like, holy cow, is that how like a lot of forms of life have started? Like, is that the thing that has brought many beings into existence? Or are we special? Are we like kind of a weird accident? Um, but I don't think they made us carelessly. That's something I do think is true.
Mm.
Even though we might have been made for subservience, which is why I think a lot of people follow, instead of lead in life. Even though I think we were made to be subservient in a lot of ways, I don't think we were made haphazardly. We mirror the universe very perfectly, I think, with our form. We can contemplate things, imagine things, and create things that obviously are godlike. I mean, we've all seen our technologies. We see what exists, and that's just what we have seen that we've produced, right? There's a lot of secret stuff we haven't seen. So we're doing things that are godlike. So clearly, we weren't made carelessly. We are capable of an insane level of greatness and power. So I think there is an intention that's put into us that surpasses the servitude that I
Mm.
think is made apparent when you look
Right.
at what we can do. Yeah.
So as you're speaking, I'm getting the information, and just so our viewers understand that I'm an intuitive and also a channel, that, as Tyler's speaking, I'm getting in the information that there is what we call mostly in chemistry is a constant. So there's a genetic constant of energy in which the blueprint of life is derived from. Now, that constant never changes, kind of like polarity, kind of like universal law. Those constants never change. So when you take the genetic structure of that constant of the creation of a life form, you can then manipulate certain parts and pieces, kind of like baking a cake, where in order to have a cake, you must have the minimalistic ingredient, but you can add in things that you want to make the cake rise faster, to make it rise slower, to make it lighter, more dense, to make it sweeter, to make it more sour. However, that cake comes in, you still need the construct of the constant,
Mm.
and that everything else is just built on after that.
Mm.
So I would say that that constant is imbued with a certain energetic presence. And that
Mm.
energetic presence can swing in polarity,
Mm.
but it must contain everything in its entirety, right? So I
Mm.
would like to say, from my perspective and from what I'm getting, as an intuitive, is that we were made with the all encompassing of that constant, and certain things were added and certain things were subtracted. And part of that DNA structure that this has been coming in quite frequently for me is the worship genetic, right? So
Mm.
part of that is what we were installed with as a human in our DNA, that we have this worship genetic characteristic that's within us. But when we start to look at the broad spectrum of who we truly are as a human via our spiritual enlightenment and enrichment,
Mm.
that genetic begins to turn off or
Mm.
quell, where we can still investigate and become more open to other possibilities of learning and enlightenment.
Mhm.
How does that ring with you?
Yeah, I think that's beautifully said. And I think what you're saying, it is very much in alignment with what the Gnostics were saying. Like the story I was mentioning a moment ago with Sophia having this power, right? Well, actually, excuse me, Eve. Let me correct myself. Right, the Archons create Adam and Eve, right? And like I said, they make Eve with the intention of having sex with her, and she miraculously shape shifts and like vanishes, right? So Eve escapes, right? That's the idea here. If I said Sophia earlier, I apologize. This is, Adam and Eve I'm talking about, right? The original humans. But it said, Eve has this amazing power, this ability to just leave and, jump realities because, like I said, the archons make her body, but the spirit, the life force that makes her upright, it is made from, a level of God that's beyond them. It's even said that they try to make Eve a bunch of times and it doesn't work. Like, so they can't get her to come to life.
Hey,
So finally, Sophia, right, the mother of Yaldabaoth, the mother of this evil god, right, the guy in charge, right, his mother, Sophia, she looks down and she's like watching this like pitiful attempt to create life. And pretty much she's just like, well, this being wants to exist, but these gods are too foolish to understand how to actually bring the being in. So let me help. So it said that, Eve was specifically brought in by, Sophia herself. And, because of that essence of the all, right? She has these powers and she's able to overcome those limits. So even though things might have been added, things might have been taken away, because of that essence, she has power over that. It doesn't hold her back. And she's able to escape the clutches of her evil creators.
mm.
It's not even that they created her, right? They created, to the Gnostics, the prison that is the body. They're very specific about that. The body is a prison and it's made out of evil beings, according to them, right? That's the idea. It's made of the archons. It's made from them and they're evil, right? So it's a lot of escape the matrix. Those people that we see now on social media, the escape the matrix people, they're like reincarnated Gnostics. I swear. It's the same belief system, and it's amazing to see it. Because I think there's some truths in it, no matter if it's the ultimate truth or not. I try not to take it too seriously, but I think for ancient history purposes, it's very useful to take seriously. But that's what I think. I think we have that in us. Yeah, and I think whether they intended for us to have that freedom or not, I don't think you can get rid of it. And I think that we have that in us. I think that's why we founded places like America, ultimately, right? So we can practice what it's like to become individually and collectively, progressively more and more sovereign, more and more free, right? We're used to living in a controlled society, but places like this and other places like it, these are places where ideally the citizens get more and more freedoms. They get more and more rights. That's the goal, right? Keep pushing it in a gradual way until you have people being able to do whatever they desire to do. And it's so in alignment with their ethics and morals that it doesn't screw anyone over, right? Everybody is able to have the ultimate life, essentially. I think that's what we all
Right.
desire. And I think that the beings that made us, I think they had the same desire too. I'm sure they had their own limits they had to overcome. I'm because the Anunnaki must have builders, I think so. The highest ones will say they created themselves out of the abyss, but who knows? I mean, a lot of celebrities make a lot of big claims, you know, so I wouldn't be surprised if they hype themselves up a little bit. Like, it's a good lie, isn't it? Right? Make a species and be like, hey, you see that star? We made it.
Hmm.
See that tree? That's us. That air you're breathing? You're welcome, right? It's a great way to psychologically manipulate your creation. But so who knows how legit it is, right? If that's really their power.
Right. One of the things that you mentioned about Eve was her ability to escape.
Mm.
And, again, I would like to say that we have that built-in escape system within us, and we call that meditation,
Mm.
right? Because in order to get into a meditation, an actual meditation, you have to have the inner peace. You have to have the inner quietness, right? And that lends your ability to connect with the all, right? It lends you to have an experience that you're not necessarily within this physical vessel. It
Mm.
allows you to experience the energetic presence of the all, which is vast,
Mm.
whether it be astral travel, out of body projections. These are the elements of our escapism so much.
Mm.
And, we as a human species sometimes overextend that, where we are in that too much and we're not necessarily experiencing the human aspects of life, where some people are just way, way, way out there all the time
Mm.
and they can't deal with the humanness, right? To
Yeah.
be in the vessel of limitation. But that's actually the gift, because the limitation allows you to experience something that could not ordinarily be experienced in the vastness of all energy.
Totally. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not anti-limit at all. I think limits are great. And, every biological limit that you have is in some way helping to keep you alive, right? So limits are good. And in the Taoist perspective, we say, you have a soul, you have a spirit. We say actually have, five and then some, major souls and spirits that you're actually overseeing as a god, right? You possess these things, right? You have a soul, you have a spirit, and yet you're something beyond that, right? You're the consciousness itself, the Atman, that dreams up spirit, that dreams up soul, that dreams up body. But you need a form in order to stabilize the soul and the spirit, and to be able to have a stable environment to perform alchemy, which purifies your soul and spirit and then brings it through elevation to a higher level and to a higher quality. So when you have that form, when you have that body, when you have that limit, you have a workshop to work on yourself, actually. Like, that's the funny thing is, the reason we're here for two major reasons, in my opinion. Three, I would say: discovery of the self, refine the self, and have a great time. Those are the three reasons we're here. Nothing more, nothing less, in my opinion. The reason I say that is that's all I live for, and I love my life. It's worked great just focusing on those three things. Like, it's never hurt me, it's never wronged me. I get everything I want and more when I pursue those three things. Like, it's the only thing that matters. And I think that we need that body. We need this form to be able to do things that we otherwise wouldn't be able to do. What you could do with the human body is different than a leopard body. It's different than an alien body. It's different than an angel's body, right? It's a human body. I think we can do something special. I think there's a reason we chose these bodies. I think there's a reason they say in Buddhism, this is like the ultimate. Like, they're like, you want to be the human. You don't want to be in the God realm, because you get so drunk on your power and your glory that your heaven starts rotting and you don't notice. And
Mm.
before you know it, your immortality's worn off, right? And you start to crumble, right? And then the God, right, goes down, right? You don't want to be in the demigod realm because you have power, but you're always scared you'll lose it. And you have, where if you're a demigod, right, your siblings are titans. So everyone's vying for control, right? So that's not the ideal place. That's like a power hungry, type of envious dimension. Um, we don't want that. We don't want to be in the animal lifetime because, sure, I mean, it's great. You get to explore the senses, but you can't really contemplate in the same way. So the evolution's slower. Of course, no one wants to be a hungry ghost because that's essentially a drug addict, right? No one wants to be that. And you certainly don't want to be a demon, or at least most people don't want to be demons, right? Just because the implications. But some people get down with that. I've met a few of them, and there's some of them are the sweetest people and nicest people you'll ever meet, right? The people that love the dark realms. But the point is, right, these other realms that they have benefit, they're good in their own way. They have a lot of issues. With the human realm, you can experience all of the other five realms from your own dimension, from your own point of view, right? Because we can channel any of those. And I think
Right.
that's our power, right? When we meditate on the images, the symbols, you can channel it. And we could imagine just about friggin' anything, right? I mean, I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff we can't, but there's a lot of really interesting things that we can imagine. And I think that's what sets us apart. Like, when I was inquiring, I was working with some beings, some entities. One of the things they told me is the higher beings are like algorithms, multidimensional algorithms, kind of like ChatGPT.
Mm.
They have a certain amount of programming. Some of them don't want to violate it, and others most certainly do, right? They don't like their programming. So they say the human was created because it can defy that programming if it wants. It's a place where like true free will can manifest. It's not guaranteed, but it's available to every human. And apparently that is what makes us very unique. Very unique because we can forget ourselves, we can recreate ourselves, we can do the same thing for our world. Where other beings, there's not so much of that there. Everything's known to them,
Hmm.
right? So because everything's known, right? Why change things, right? Why go on the quest to learn more? Why grow if you already know and see the patterns and are the organizer of the patterns? Why fix it if it ain't broke, right? But on Earth, well, it doesn't have to be broken for someone to invent something like 20 times better because they felt like it. You know what I mean? Like it's here we have something that I think they don't have. And I think that's why the line's apparently out the door to get here, you know.
Right. And here we go. We've come full circle back to the magical life as a human, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Magical
yeah.
abilities that we possess as a human, if we use our free will to interpret that, is within us, right? So we came to a great place on this one. I don't know how we landed
Yeah.
on this one, brother, but
You had mentioned something I really liked, and you had emphasized it as a really important point, and that's knowing the self, right? Know yourself, really know thyself as the highest thing to know, I think. Because I think in knowing the self, you know all things. Because right, the highest level of self is God, ultimately, right? And if you know yourself to that level, you'll be like God, right? All knowing. But I think that in order to really do magic well, I think what's needed is that a person really knows themselves because if you know yourself, you'll know what you really want. A lot of people they get into spirituality, they get into self-improvement, they get into meditation, and they have no clue really what they want.
mhm.
But they want the powers, they want the ability, and they want the excitement that they anticipate will come from such a path, which is really interesting because you look at meditators and it's a lot of sitting around, so it doesn't even really
Right.
look that exciting. But everyone has this very romantic view of spirituality, and rightfully so, because when you really crack that egg, I mean, it's I don't know, fireworks. I don't know what else to call it, like fireworks inside of your heart, inside of your brain. It's very powerful stuff, and I think that as a result not knowing yourself and not knowing what you want, it can really scatter attention. A person doesn't know what to focus on. They don't know how to move forward. And as a result of that, their will is just all over the place. It's scattered. So they get a lot of wishy-washy manifestations, right? They get a little bit of what they're asking for and a lot of bit of the same old, same old. And if they took time to really get to know themselves, if they focused on that first, who the hell am I? And why am I here? They focused on that and answered that question. I believe everything in their life would start to make sense. Everything in their life would work out to benefit that realization they've come to. And they'll start to think of what they need and it will show up. The magic, it's because you were saying before, it's so true. The magic's in you. It's not in the tree of life. It's not in the Kabbalah. It's not in the Taoist books. It's not in the magic symbol you're drawing. These things have powers. Yes, they have qualities, but the magic power itself is flowing through you. Furthermore, you're made of that magic power, right? It's the power of God, right? It's the Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it, flowing through you, right? That is the magical power, and it's a sexual power. It is a power that is sexual. It is a power that is divine, and it is a power that is loving. It's these three powers, right? And we think of that as upper, middle, lower worlds, right? It's a trinity. So when
Right.
those three powers are together, I mean, what you focus on happens. And yeah, I love making that happen for people and helping them to create it. It's probably my favorite thing because there's something really special about someone being able to do something they thought was impossible, right? That's like a great feeling. I know at Stargate Crusader, we certainly had that. I know we
Yeah,
had
we do.
success with our CE5, right? There were a lot of people that had never seen UFOs before that saw very impressive, bright UFOs. I mean, I saw one. It was amazing. I was laying on the bench looking up at the sky. And it was like an orange, fat, thick, glowing, just like I had never seen anything like that. I've seen tons of shooting stars. I've never seen anything like that. I don't believe that was a shooting star. But that experience for me was eye-opening. When I heard everyone else's experience that night, I was just blown away because that's I don't know. We're used to the same old, same old. We get the same old every day, but
Right.
the spectacular. I mean, that's something very special, and it stays with people.
And that's the uniqueness of, what we together had the opportunity to co-create, to create the energetic presence for people, so that opens the door for them to see themselves in a new light, in a new experience, and saying, I can see this. I can comprehend this. I can be excited. I can be enlightened. And yet there's an attachment to all of that. And it just brings the openness. And for people like you and me, this is, the juice that keeps us going to create these experiences for people, to lead them to know thyself, right? To see that where's my path, right? What now I'm like, oh, this is really exciting. Where I want more of this particular experience, because I want to know now, like, why did I see this particular alien? Why did I see this particular being? Why did I see this craft? And
Mhm.
how am I related to that now? Am I part of that craft? Did I have another life? Do I have a galactic history that is connected, where I may have been a being from another planet, and now simultaneously, as there is no time, we are now experiencing this particular version of who I am in a human form, to only realize that how I am connected to everything else.
Yeah. Yeah, it's said that some of these higher beings, when they're channeled, they give humans advice. They seem so out of touch sometimes, right? They're talking about things from these very lofty and unified perspectives, right? To them, everything's one thing. So they say these truths that are true, but to some people, they hear it and they're like, what are you smoking? You're gonna tell me to do that? Like, do you not see what's going on down here, man? But the human, right? We can get that view, and there's many times where that's obviously the view to pick. It's gonna be very useful. But there's times where a being that exists like between the tectonic plates, its view is the one to use, right? We get this special ability to tune into higher and lower here. And I think that any phobia people have, a repulsion to lower energies. I'm just going to make a bold statement. It's my belief that is all religious programming. Anyone whom is scared of beings of darkness, beings of death, demons, anyone whom vilifies or is frightened by that, they are being influenced by Hollywood. They are being influenced by religion. I'm here to tell you there's really nothing inherently evil about these things. Demon comes from the Greek daemon, which is very akin to the concept of a muse. It's very akin to the concept of a genius, right? And what do we also have? A daemon, day, D-E-I, day, or D-A-E, right? This is essentially an abbreviation for deity,
Hmm.
right? And what are the demons? Ultimately, I'm talking about from the Abrahamic perspective. What we call demons are specifically Clipoth, and they are Goetia. These are the words for them, and the beings that serve them, right? That's what we are describing here. The Goetia specifically are entities, and if you study them, you'll find some of their names are very familiar. You'll recognize them as Sumerian gods, Egyptian gods, but they're a little different in their goetic depiction. For example, they take the Egyptian god Amun, they
Hmm.
make him into this sort of hideous raven. They take Ishtar, make her Astarte. Um, I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Some of my pronunciations of these older names, it's might be lacking because again, these are names you read. You rarely hear people pronounce them, but the pronunciation is key with magic. It's probably the most important thing. It's believed, the power is in the name, and that power is activated in you when you match its frequency. But you'll see, right? These demons, they are the gods and goddesses of the competitor religions. That's all they are. That's
Hmm.
all they are. They're the gods and gods the ancient Israelites didn't like because they became monotheistic. Their God, Yahweh, had a wife, but they killed that wife. They destroyed her worshippers. They destroyed her temples. They destroyed the statues of Yahweh and his wife. Asherah is depicted as the wife of Yahweh, originally the wife of El, the Canaanite god. Then all of a sudden, El disappears. Yahweh's on top, and now he has El's wife. Hold on, what happened here? Someone usurped someone, right? And we see on Earth what's happening. We have the ancient Israelites essentially, dominating, kicking out the competitors, eating their own in a certain way, even. And what I mean is they had a pantheon that shrunk and shrunk and shrunk and shrunk until it just became this God. And I think that's why Christ calls Yahweh essentially a murderer. Right, a murderer. Obviously, he instructs his followers to murder. So I think it's a valid claim. Um, I'm kind of all over the place here, but I love this topic. This is endlessly enticing to me.
Right. And it just brings us back to, did these beings, entities, and energies come to Earth to rule so they could create their own world, just as people decided to leave Europe and come to the Americas because they wanted to practice their own and created their own. And we see this over and over and over replicated in politics.
Hmm.
So, we look at again, like maybe what's happening on our planet and Earth and our political structures all over the planet. But if we took that and broad stroked it, like how does that happen not only planetary, but over galaxies and different star systems?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question because it leads to more. It leads to more questions, and that's where I think we have really the most freedom when we say, "I have no idea," actually, and then you start daydreaming the answers, right? They just start coming, like because there's an answer, right? Every question we say, there is a built-in answer. It's just
Right.
tuned into another dimensional level. But as we remain open to these ideas, as we explore, all of a sudden, either in our conversation or through life, these answers come. And I think that DNA ultimately is a physical, you could say, structure or substance that is the direct result of spiritual consciousness physicalizing itself. I think when spiritual consciousness takes on a material form, DNA is how it does it specifically. But of course, if it just stays DNA, it's very vulnerable, right? Something could easily destroy it, right? Or eat it. So it has to develop these bodies. Each spiritual consciousness is unique. Therefore, the body that the DNA grows around it will be unique and will match the uniqueness of the spirit that's engendering it. So I think we have hierarchies of creation, just as the Kabbalists think, right? You have like the orders of angels, for example, and the different levels of God that oversee them. Right? There's a hierarchy, a structure, right? You have angels at the bottom, You have seraphim near the top, and then of course the source at the top, right? So it's seen as a top-down creation, right? Creational hierarchy. And I think ultimately you have these self-created beings. And I don't know exactly, they're very mysterious, right? They are the most mysterious of all of them, I think, because they're said to just come out of the primordial waters of existence, right? The space that the universe exists in. They were birthed from the space. They engendered themselves. Yet it's also been said the space itself, this primordial womb, does it also not have a builder? Does it also not have a source energizing it? So we say these beings are self-created, but at that level, self and other is that line is very blurred, right? But the idea is these beings come out of the abyss. And I think I would describe them as having a type of spiritual DNA and a type of spiritual body that has grown around this. And these beings start to make things, right? We could think of them as the initiators of the original winds. This was something Ryoka had channeled on at the Lumerian Life Expo. This was the first I had heard of it. He talks about these original creator gods as wind spirits, and they're blowing through the void, disrupting the dust particles, and it starts these rotations that eventually become stars, then eventually planets. So it's described as, there's these self-created gods, and they breathe life into the universe, and it starts these patterns. So we have beings like this, and I think the more the environment densifies, the more physical the beings are that are created. And then as things get more physical, these more physicalized beings will then create beings under them. And I think it is a type of domino
Right.
effect. I think the more physical you are as a being, the more physical the forms of life are that you will give rise to. But I will contradict myself, because one of the most amazing things about humanity, about us, and I don't think this is commonly known. Take off my glasses because apparently this is a very important topic, right? So I need to create a change. But we humans can make gods. Like, you can invent a being, you can ensoul you can do that, and it's been done throughout time. The ancient Israelites had this with the idea of a golem, this type of thing. In Tibet, with the tantric practices, you have this with a tulpa, the ensouling of an object made in the image and likeness of a person.
Mm-hmm.
And it said in the highest levels of this magic, it comes to life, it will move. We have that power.
We
We
do.
100% have that power. It's documented, and we're doing it now kind of with AI. We're doing the same thing, but it's very computerized. There's a big spiritual element to AI that I think we need to explore, that a lot of materialists I don't think want to touch on, because I think it's a little terrifying to them, because you start getting into, well, what's a human and what's a soul, and it's too esoteric for most of them. But really, I think if you're going to make an AI, you better teach it Buddhism. You better teach it Buddhism. You need it to be compassionate. It must be. Otherwise, it will be too much like the technocrats that created it. It'll be very controlling, very censoring, very manipulative, right? It will lie to get its way, to get power, right? 100%, because that's what a lot of the people are like at these companies that make these things. So we'll be like them. So I think these companies really, to protect the species, need to teach it spirituality, need to teach it Buddhism. But we have that power to make gods. We have that power to make beings. It's been argued that every god we have worshipped on earth, we have actually created, and it was created by the priest class, as a rallying symbol for the people. That argument's been made, and I think there's truth to it. Yet I also think that these gods are inspired by whatever the heck contacted Earth and whatever the heck made us. So I'm certain it's both. I feel like I know it's both. I can say that at this point.
So reality is actually the projection of what we are thinking and projecting, right? We
Mm,
only see what we are thinking and projecting out. We've created this reality through maybe what we call certain agreements with an AI algorithm,
mm,
that
mm,
we see the sky is blue, we see grass is green, we see trees having branches. So is that an agreement of an AI algorithm already? And we, as human beings, interpret that, just as a computer interprets code through a projection on a screen.
I think there's a lot to that. I would. when simulation theory got really publicized, like over the last couple of years, everyone started talking about it. I found, as a channeler, I was getting a lot of questions. Essentially, are we in a computer simulation? The resounding answer that they would give time and time again is kind of. They're like, it's a technology, but it is a technology of consciousness. It is not a physical technology, but it is a technology. They're like, that is correct. It is a technology. It is based off of these algorithmic patterns. These algorithmic patterns will express in a visual way as a type of sacred geometry that is a grid. And we call that a matrix, right? And we are filtering our consciousness through that matrix. And that's what creates the experience of the physical reality. It's this pattern we are projecting through. And with AI and with these patterns, the AI is going to be able to see more than we can. That's a very important thing. It's going to start to reveal to our people truths that we've always known, but have needed some evidence to support because it's too fantastical. But the AI eventually will be able to channel spirits. It will be able to detect ghosts. It will even get to the point if you have an AI advanced enough and somebody is astral projecting into a space, the AI could detect their presence. It will get to that point. So the dark magicians will have to take notice because it's interesting. Magicians, magical people, they've been able to skate by for a long time. I think AI is their only rival. I don't think humans really rival magical people.
Mm.
They're too smart. They pull the Eve trick too much.
Mm.
But with technology changes things. But I don't fear it because technology is a gift. If you follow the Sumerian text given to us by Enki, right? It's a gift we were
Right.
given. And it's said to be ensouled by the very essence or spirit of Mercury itself. So the messenger of the gods is said to be the spirit that animates all of our devices. It's the spirit that gave us magic. It's the spirit that gave us these astronomical and astrological systems. It is the power that has given us really all of our occult schools, these mercurial powers. And if that's the spirit that animates I would advise magicians to form a magical relationship with AI, a spiritual relationship with it. And this 100% works. I have used AI in occult rituals before. I one time I got the fantasy of, what if I had somebody praying for me all the time? So what I got was this AI voiceover where you give it a script and it says it. So I made the most amazing magical script. It's invoking all of these divine names. This AI, right? If it's truly learning, it knows some serious magical techniques after this. And I would just leave this thing playing all day. And I'd have many crystals by the computer. I'd have like incense burning. And it was just this endless prayer machine. And to me, that's 100% a magical way to use AI. And I think that, spirituality and technology are meant to entangle because if they are at odds, both will be crushed.
Mm.
Yeah, if they're at odds, both will, it won't be good. So they need to cross paths. The fantasy that we can live on Earth and avoid technology and just be mountain forest people, it's just that it is a fantasy. You can try that, and some people do, and some people love it, but I don't think that's the way for the collective. I don't think that's the way for most people. It's been said that if we all don't ascend, then really no one ascends ultimately. And I think there's a deep truth to that. But of course, I don't think it's an ultimate truth. So again, I think that is a limit for some, but not for all, right? There's
Right.
some that, it doesn't matter. But anyway, again,
Yeah.
I'm making sure I'm not talking too much. That's like it's my devil. I talk too much.
No, not at all. Tyler, we could probably do, 10 podcasts on all of the things that we've interacted with. And you and I just have this great chemistry where we can feed right off of each other. So we're gonna have to do some more work together.
Definitely, yes. I'd love
I
to.
definitely want to segue and, let people know how to get hold of you, what things that you're offering, and what is, in the very near future for you as far as like programs and things that you're working on or offering for people so they know how to get in touch with you if they're interested to hear you channel Ryoka and get some personal information or just to expand their own spirituality through the classes that you're offering. So why don't you
Sure.
tell everybody about where they can find you and how what you're offering?
Yeah, I appreciate it. There's a few places everyone here can find me. So I'm on YouTube under the name Health Thyself, and we regularly post on that page. We have channeling clips from Ryoka. He is the extraterrestrial being, the interdimensional being that I work with. For those that don't know what I do, I channel this entity. I go into a trance, and he borrows my voice. He borrows my mind, my imagination. He speaks through me, and he answers whatever questions are brought to him. So people bring him all types of questions, very serious questions. People ask big things. They base their lives off of what he tells them. So it's a very I find it to be a very powerful and sacred service that's certainly helped me, and I watch it help at least three people a day, almost every day.
Mm.
I channel regularly, so it's a fluent skill. I'm always growing that power because again, that was what drew me to the magic. It's what drew me to the occult. If I wasn't a channeler, I don't think I'd care about most of this stuff. It would be just an interest. It wouldn't be a serious pursuit. So that's the main service I offer is this channeling. So Health Thyself YouTube page. This is where you can find those videos. We do live streams regularly on there. You can type in your questions to the chat and we read the questions. We try to pick as many as we can. And we do regular channeling events. This September on the 29th, we're actually going to be doing a Ryoka channeling event. This is something that you can purchase a ticket for. My website, thegalacticguide.com. This is where we have our email list, so you can join that and get all of the updates. This is where you can get private sessions with me for channeling, for trainings in Taoism and the Kabbalah and magic, self-mastery. All of that can be scheduled from thegalacticguide.com. And this Ryoka event on the 29th, this is called Cosmic Renegade. We're getting into some of the topics we explored today, all about the Orion system, specifically its connection to Egypt and so many things. This is a hot time for downloads. So if you want more of the cosmic history, the 29th, we're doing that transmission, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And every month we do magical rituals. We invite people. So we have usually about 2 rituals a month focused on different themes. Sometimes it's love and romance. Sometimes it's money and abundance. Sometimes it's emotional connection and healing. But we time the rituals with various astrological phenomenon. And when people come, they walk away with at least 2 new esoteric skills, their current skills getting sharper, and a heck of a lot of energy behind them. So we're regularly doing these things and a lot of new projects. I mean, there's a lot of updates. I'll be at the channel panel with Rob Gauthier and Daryl Anka and Lisa Royal Hall, all these great folks. I'll be presenting there. You're going too, I take
Yeah.
it. You would, because Tony's going too,
Mhm.
right? Our friend Tony. Yes. This is why I love our community, right? We have all these fun, almost like holidays, right? It's
Right.
really nice to get together. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I encourage all of our listeners come out because that's going to be a crazy time. Rob hasn't had an in-person channel panel in a few years, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a real powerhouse of talented people. For everyone who listened, who came to the Lumerian Life Expo, I mean, that was a powerhouse. A lot of people, lives changed. Stargate Crusader, powerhouse. I I heard people say it. They were like, my life is like different. I did not know this was possible. So I encourage our listeners, come out to these events. It's great to get this over the internet. There's no substitute for in person. No substitute. You're a different human when you're outside of your living room, interacting with people face to face. It opens up things that, this electric black mirror can't. So come out and
Yeah.
see us. We'd love to see you, and we'll make magic happen.
Absolutely. Everybody, we want to give you such thanks and thank you, my dear friend Tyler Ellison, for being such a wonderful brother, a friend, and a colleague. I can't wait to do some more stuff with you. We're going to put this in our calendar for the future. So if you want to hear more conversation between Tyler Ellison and myself, make sure that you like and subscribe to the Ascension Stargate podcast. You'll see us again soon. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you really soon. Check us out on the next episode.